Welcome to Wagons of Steel. It's a party and everyone's invited. Today we're going to talk about the Dodge Dart, one of Mopar's most popular cars ever. Here's one behind us. This is 1971. It's actually Joe's Dart, or it was Joe's Dart. We have reclaimed this Dart because Joe got an even better Dart, which I'll show you in a second. This is the 1971. You've seen there, I made a video about it earlier when we were reclaiming it from the bushes. It's a V8 car. I'm debating whether I'll even show you the V8. It's not a slant six, it's a 318. Here's the inside. If you've ever played with Mopars before, you can smell the car just from looking at this. I assure you it smells just like you imagine. Joe gave us this Dart because he got the better Dart, and we're going to build this into an actual race car. I think it might be a car that doesn't ever drive on the street again. I'll take you along for some of that as we do it. You can see it's got some bodywork issues here, but we've got this piece of sheet metal here that we can put on. It's it's got all the issues a Dodge Dart would have if you're gonna make a badass race car out of it. I'll just give you a short rundown. The rear end is a 7 1/4 unit. Probably can't really see it in the dark down there. Oh yeah, you can. You can tell it's a 7 1/4 because it's not a Dana, and it's not an 8 3/4. It's not an 8 1/4 even. It's a 7 1/4, which came with these cars a lot. This one, actually being a V8 car, came with an 8 3/4, which is what you want for one of these cars, but of course it was stolen from this car before we even got it. So now we're going to build another one and put it in there. The 7 1/4, with anything bigger than a slant six on it, especially if you actually race it, it'll buzz all the teeth off the ring gear before you can say, oh no, and that's no fun. Telling you from personal experience. 71's a good year for darts. Later on, they got what we call the beak nose, where this area kind of comes out and has like an actual beak on it, whereas this is flat. In the early 70s, all the big three were starting to transition to more functional and less attractive bumper grill assemblies, because you had, I can't remember what the rules were, but something like 15 mile an hour bumper. You had to be able to get in a wreck at 15 miles an hour, something like that, or 5. I think it was 15, and not cause any damage, which of course, made for some pretty ugly noses on cars. Let me walk you down the driveway and I'll show you the other Dart. Dart was, they came out with Dart originally because people wanted smaller cars that got better gas mileage. And so the Dart, what we know is the Dart, the A-body Dart, came out in 1963, I think. In 62, they made something called a Dart that was actually a B-body, which is a max wedge race car. So here's what a bumper looked like when back in the day. It's just a big, ugly railroad tie. I mean, I know this is not a Mopar and it's not a Dart, but that's really what was going on with bumpers. They were eventually they were just big old railroad ties designed to prevent major damage to the car, which of course means major damage for other cars. Now here's Joe's new Dart, and unlike the other Dart, this car fires up and drives. This car is it's a good machine. You can see he's been racing it. 8th Mile Racing at Bremerton Raceway. He's got the numbers off it. I'm not too good at 1/8 mile. I race 1/4 mile. I don't really. I just have to do the math. But this one is a slant 6, the leaning tower power. Let's see if I can open it up for you. Okay, closer. There you go. Here it is. Dun dun dun. The leaning tower of power. This is the 225 cubic inch version. They also made 170 and 195 cubic inch versions. There's an easy way to tell the difference between them, and I can't. I don't know. I just know it's a 225. People always say they're unkillable, but I'll tell you what, if you want to kill one of these things, run it out of oil and keep on driving it. There isn't a motor around that will survive that. That's I guarantee it. It'll start knocking and rocking, and then that'll be that. It'll go phew. This one runs pretty good. He's won some rounds drag racing with it. It takes some time to learn how to race a car like this. It's so slow, unbelievable. You just watch it leave. It's like, did it leave? And then it just takes forever to get down the track, and it's all, you got to run the number you wrote on the window and cut a good light, and after that, it's everybody's racing. So racing against a really slow car messes with some fast cars sometimes. Close this up. And this one is the 2-door post, which is pretty rare. Pretty cool, actually. This car came with a 340 along with it. I mean, obviously it's got a slant 6 in it, but he can put the 340 in it. So he's got to do the same stuff with this car that we got to do with that car back there. It's of course got the 7 1/4 rear end, so he's got to put an 8 3/4 in it. He's got to find another transmission because the transmission from this obviously will not fit. Those cool looking wheels are what's known as small bolt pattern. Chrysler had 2 bolt patterns, big bolt pattern and small bolt pattern, and on the A bodies you could get either one, and I think the F bodies, the Velaris and the Aspens, you could get either one too. In the later years of Mopar, as we know it as a classic Mopar people, the late 70s, Chrysler was just throwing everything they had in the warehouses at their cars, so you never knew what you were going to get. And so that was the era when you got the Velaris and the Dodge, what was that called? Not the Volare. Anyways, you had the small bolt pattern on a lot of those and big bolt pattern, and I guess I've heard of cars even having a mix, one on one and one on the other, which would be absolutely crazy. And so this car has, this is a 67 slant 6, so it's got small bolt pattern all around. They look pretty classy. It's a groovy looking car. There's a lot of people who would say, don't do a damn thing to that car. What, are you crazy? But Joe wants it to be a 340 car, and a 340 and a Dodge Dart is like chocolate and peanut butter, or peanut butter and jelly, or two great things that go great together. And so he's going to put that in there, and it'll be a wicked car. So he's got to put the big bolt pattern wheels on, and then he's got to put disc brakes on the front, and he's got to put an 8 3/4 rear end in the back, and get another transmission, and of course all the other little details, because car's got to start and run and all that stuff. He's going to make it mostly a street car that's fast on the drag strip, and we're going to let him run the red Dart periodically, but that's just going to be a race car, and this is going to be a badass street car. The Dodge Dart and the Plymouth Valiant, like I said before, they came out in the early 60s, and they were in response to people wanting smaller, better gas mileage cars. I guess Volkswagen and Toyota were hitting the shores then, and they saw the writing on the wall, and people just wanted to not have cars that got single-digit gas mileage anymore, and they wanted something they could park, and they wanted something that was affordable. And so Mopar hatched the A-body platform. And at first they made them in wagons, convertibles, 2 doors, 4 doors. I actually had a couple of different wagons. I had Eduardo the Valiant, who was a 65, and Ronaldo the Valiant, who was a 64 with the push buttons, which was a lot of fun. And those cars, if you're looking for a cool old Mopar wagon to get into, they're still out there. You can find them. And then, you know, they're all rotten, but all cool old cars that are affordable are rotten, and, you know, you can fix stuff. Then in 67, the year that this car is, they no longer made station wagons, and they just made them in 2 doors and 4 doors. And they were this square look that you're used to. Like the 63 through 66 were more, they're not round, but they had more like kind of shape and lines to them than these square ones. This one, 67, you could get a big block in a 67 Dart. A 383 was available in the hardtop. They made very few of them. Joe looked that up. I didn't believe it, but they did. And then in, I don't know what they offered in the Plymouth Valiant. I know they probably had the 318. The 273 was still available in 67. I've seen cars with factory 273s all the way up to 69. The 273 is very much the same thing as it's just got smaller holes, but it's the same thing as a 318. It's got solid lifters, so it makes that solid lifter sound. They made the Barracuda had the Formula S, and Dodge Dart had the GTS. I know the Formula S had the 273. The GTS, I think, might have come out in 68 or 69. Anyways, that was the high-performance small block until the 318 came along, and then the 340 and the 360. The big block options in these cars, aside from the 383 and 67, was in 69 they made the Formula S Barracuda and the Dart GTS, and you could get 440 in a 1969 Dodge Dart. Pretty impressive package. Of course, with 9-inch drum brakes or 10-inch drum brakes, they barely stopped. A terrifying car to drive. I'm sure most of them got wrapped around telephone poles. With a 750-pound engine on the front of one of these little guys, you probably didn't steer very well either. And to make the mass-produced exhaust system fit under the hood of one of these things, they choked the horsepower down pretty far. So they were not as, like, really the performance package to have in a Dodge Dart was the 340, which was an awesome motor in the day. And you know, nowadays you could build up anything you want. I mean, you could make a Slant 6 go as fast as the 340, but as far as a factory optioned badass muscle car Dart, the 340 was the hot ticket. Faster than a 440, faster than a 383. That said, you know, being the stock eliminator guy, and if you're watching this channel, you know there's going to be some talk of stock eliminator, because that's the Wagons of Steel affliction and addiction. But since Dodge and Plymouth offered a 340 or a 440 in one of these A bodies, you can build one as a stock eliminator car, and you're allowed to put headers onto one. You can spend $2,000 or $3,000 to get a really awesome set of headers built to put a 440 into one of these cars, and so the breathing issues are a non-issue. So they factory rated the horsepower for these at much less than a 440 in like a Roadrunner or a Charger or something. So it's a natural stock eliminator package. Since the factory rated the horsepower is less, NHRA kind of start from less, so it's an underfactored combination. Underfactored, which means that the rule book readers of stock eliminator, which is to say people who read stock eliminator, they like that. So you can run a lighter car with a 440 in it, and they really scream. So if you build a stock eliminator 440 and put it in one of these cars, you really got something, or else you did it wrong. So there's that. They put the 440 in it, and they put the 383 in it, and of course 1968 the A body came with a Hemi, which was until very recently the most badass factory car ever built. So badass, in fact, that they have their own class in drag racing. they're so wicked you can't even race them in stock. You can only run them in super stock because they have so much horsepower that you can't make this car fit into any class in stock eliminator. It's too much. And if you ever get a chance to witness a Hemi shootout, which is usually what it's called at an NHRA event, where they have one every year, Indy, and they have one at Mission sometimes. If you ever happen to see one that's happening, or if you just get a chance to see a Hemi Superstock car run, it's always worth checking out. They're unbelievable. And if you check them out up close, they're built like a modern Pro Stock car. They've got the full cage in it there's like a wraparound section for the driver, and they've got since they're super stockers, they're not required to run factory leaf spring rear end, so they've got 4-link, and then they recently changed the rules so that the 4-speed and the automatic are lumped together. They don't have automatic versus stick class anymore. It's all one, and they figured out that stick is faster, so they're all 4-speed stick cars, and just unbelievable to watch. And even better, I have never met somebody running one of those cars who isn't just tickled to be out there. You're the team owner, the driver, all those folks. They're all just tickled to be out there. They're having a great time, and they will talk to you about the car. And I mean, you never want to mess with somebody who's racing as they're in the staging lanes, getting their game on, getting ready to go race. But by and large, if you ever get a chance to talk to somebody about their super stock Hemi Dart, it's always worth it. All right, so in the boring years, like starting in probably 72, 73, 74, they put the beak nose on them, which I don't like. And they got strangled by emission stuff like most cars did. And so of course the big blocks went away. There were no more big block darts after 69. That was just like a crazy year. The small blocks got more and more choked, and then eventually it was nothing but like a 318 2-barrel and the slant 6 available. They had the Plymouth Valiant came out with the Duster, very famous car, the Valiant Duster, and Dodge Dart had the Demon. So those were fastback versions, which are pretty cool cars. The Demon eventually got called the Dart Sport because I think it was some religious thing. The Demon name was not Mopar didn't have the guts to keep calling a car the Demon. And then what else happened with those cars? Well, that was like kind of what I was talking about earlier. They threw everything but the kitchen sink at those cars towards the end. They all had like, you get big bowl patterns, small bowl patterns. Sometimes they had like, rally dashes, fancy steering wheels. Is there anything else interesting? Oh, there's like the Hang 10 package. There's which was like, had like the surfer motif. And then there was like the Space Duster and the Feather Duster and the Gold Duster. The Feather Duster has a bunch of aluminum parts on it. So if you're building a race car and you happen to see some totally decrepit Feather Duster in somebody's yard, it's worth checking out. I mean, it's no secret. I mean, anybody who knows what they're dealing with is going to charge you some coin for it, but they've got a lot of aluminum stuff on them. So like I think the bracing under the hood of the Feather Duster is made out of aluminum. And the Dart one is called the Dart Light. And I don't know what this Space Duster. The Space Duster had like a fold down back seat so you could put a piece of plywood in the back. There are a bunch of cool Dart stuff. I'm glad we have a bunch of darts in the family. Some of my best friends drive darts. I'm a little big for a Dart. I'm 6'2", and I like my B bodies. I like the C bodies, the big old gunboats for driving around in the street. I don't mind driving a huge car, but Dusters are pretty, and Darts and Valiants, they're good cars, and it was definitely a high point in Mopar's development, and I highly recommend, if you have a chance to drive or own a Dodge Dart, you should definitely go for it. They're a good car. Well, if you made it this far, thanks for hanging around and watching the whole video. That helps the algorithm. And speaking of helping the algorithm, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe and like and comment down below. All that stuff, it really helps. If you feel like being a part of the team and figuring out Patreon, I've got a Patreon site now, which I'll link to down below, and just wanted to say thanks to everybody who's really pitched in to help me get my race engine program back together again. Looks like we're going to pull that off. It's it's one step at a time, and I'll be sure to clue you in as we make progress. But we've been moving. It's gonna happen. So I'll like I say, I'll keep you in the loop. And thanks everybody who's pitched in. And I've still got lots of shirts and cool stuff available. So if you want some of that, you can email me, and I'll put more stuff up as I keep on going. And I'll put up another video next week. One of these days, I'm going to be finally taking this tree out of the station wagon, moving the station wagon. That might be next week. I'm not sure. But until then, keep the rubber side down, keep the shiny side up, keep the wet stuff in the engine, and keep them smiling.